and I'm one of the elders here, and it's a delight to see all of some familiar faces. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a picture for all posterity's sake of this suspicious group, and we'll pass this on to Dan and Sheryl Shedd. We have a great heritage of missions at our church, back to our founding principles. And that was one of the things that really drew Michelle and I to this particular church when we were looking for a ministry spot. Well, sometimes we have famous people in our presence, those who grew up in our church, and the world-famous daughter of Bud and Elaine McCullough is here with us today. Dan and Sheryl Shedd, we're delighted to have you here. They're going to come and give us an update. Usually on the last Sunday of the month, we get a missions update, and this time we get to hear it in person. And so we're delighted to welcome Dan and Sheryl Shedd. And then in just a few moments, Dad will be giving us the morning message. So Dan and Sheryl, come and share what God has laid on your hearts.
So those of you who know my parents, now you understand us. I think my parents have been here 62 years, because I'm 62 years old. I think. Is that right? 63. Sorry, I was off one. You weren't around. I wasn't around to know, so how would I know? It's just great to be here. I did grow up here. We got married here at the church, and there are so many of you that we know and love, and it's great to see people that we don't know and love yet, and also people that we knew that are visiting just to be able to say hi, which is really precious to us. So thank you for coming, everybody. So I wanted to start with a verse that God gave Dan at the beginning of our health journey last summer. Romans 2:12 says, "Rejoice in hope." And that's what we were singing about, all the hope that we have for the future. Be patient in tribulation, and all of us experience tribulation. It's not just us. We know there are other really hard things going on in your lives today. So, and be constant in prayer. And, we have so many people that pray for us daily, and those prayers are being answered. So to go back and just give those of you who don't really know our story, we were missionaries in Ecuador with what was called HCJB World Radio for 30 years. It's now called Reach Beyond, and Dan will be explaining why that name. So we lived in Ecuador for 30 years, and we came back to the States in 2018 because we had found out Dan had prostate cancer. He had surgery, needed another surgery, and our mission had us come back. I was also having some breathing issues with the high altitude at 9,000 feet in Quito, Ecuador. So we came back, and Dan started working. He's a CPA, started working at Reach Beyond. But he will tell his story. I'm going to tell our health story. So last summer on May 24th, which was 2 days ago, a year, so he's survived over a year. We found out that his prostate cancer had gone to stage 4, and his presentation is so rare that maybe 10 people in the world a year have this presentation. We called Mayo Clinic. They've never seen it. So it's very, very rare. And the prognosis for most people is 6 months or less of this cancer. And it was pretty nice to hear our doctor say, well, he's so healthy, it's not anywhere else in his body. He has 18 to 24 months. And like I just said, he's been a year, and look at him. So then August 14th, I had just finished my treatment for stage 3B breast cancer on May 26th, 2 days after we found out that he had stage 4 cancer. I did a brain MRI for something else, and we found metastasis from breast cancer, or cancerous spots in my brain. We then did a PET scan and found I had at least 10 spots in my liver. It was full of cancer. And that's really shocking because if you know anything, which I didn't know anything before I had breast cancer, but if you know anything about it, most people get at least 2 to 3 years, and that's even rare to have it come back that soon. I got 2.5 months after my treatment. So we were both diagnosed last summer. Our cancers are rare. As I spoke of, Dan's, mine is 0.5% of all breast cancers, and they're both aggressive. And my doctor said, you have some months left. She told me, do what you want to do that's fun and prepare to pass. And she's very optimistic, and that's what really hit me. Wow, she's like always super optimistic. And that's what she told me. However, God had different plans, and everybody was praying. And here we are still. And our treatments that we started are working. So Dan gets hormone treatment and 4 pills a day. And every 3 months, he gets a PSA test, and he just had one, and his PSA is negligible, which means the cancer's not growing. So he's good. We're very thankful. And then I have hormone estrogen suppression, 2 pills a day they're called chemo pills, but they're not a true chemo. They're more of a targeted therapy. And then I get an infusion every 3 weeks in Denver. We live in Colorado Springs. I really believe that infusion that I'm getting has saved my life or given me more time, of course, in conjunction with God and what He's doing. We both also do alternative treatments. We have lots of supplements and ozone therapy and a lot of other things, which I was doing from the very beginning, and obviously none of my treatment, either side, helped. Not that much. So, but it is now, and we're very thankful. I just had my 3-month test. I had 2 spots in my brain. One has completely disappeared. One is stable, probably means it's scar tissue. I did do radiation, one round of radiation at my brain. And then all of my liver mets are still gone. There's nothing else in my body. So it's a miracle. So, in fact, it was only 2 months after I started my treatment that we found out all my liver mets were gone. And so it was very exciting. My oncologist came bouncing into my room, and she's so cute. Anyway, it was really hard to receive these 2 diagnoses in the summer, so close together. We have 8 children, 6 grandchildren, and 2 on the way in June coming in Colorado. And I think, we want to be here for our children, and the thought that I might go, but Dan would go too, that nobody would be there was even harder for me. Dan too, I'm sure. I mean, he doesn't, we've fought all our life of who's going to go first, and we still do. But anyway, we can truly say, though, it's been amazing. You know how when somebody says, God just gave me an amazing peace, and the Bible talks about this peace that passes all understanding. I mean, we've had that throughout this whole journey. Yes, we've had a few weeks after diagnosis where we struggle, and we go to Him and say, what are you doing? And, and are you really there? And we knew He was in our minds, but sometimes our hearts maybe didn't feel it. I don't know if any of you have been there. But He came, and He has given, I realize that God promises us the fruit of the Spirit, and we can pray for that in confidence. And the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, and He's given us that in spades, more than I've ever had in my life. So it's been really amazing to be able to walk with Him through this, to draw closer to Him. And, if you are going through hard times, turn to Him, because He's there for you, and He loves you. And, of course, we have the hope of all of the promises of our future, too. In fact, when I found out that my liver mets were gone, there was just a small part of me that was like, well, now I'm not going to go to heaven as soon as I thought I might. So I'm still glad to be here, but if He does, we don't know when, how much time He's going to give us. He is giving us more time, and I believe it's an answer to your prayers, our prayers, everybody's prayers that are praying around the world. And we aren't, we know that He wants us to glorify Him, to use that time to glorify Him, and that is our prayer, that we will be able to do that. So it's also given us a lot of opportunities to share the gospel. I have a huge medical staff. I'm seeing doctors all the time. And they know where I stand, and they know where my hope is. And it's been great because people will listen. There's no barrier as far as, oh, why are you telling me this? You're trying to push your faith on me when you have a terminal disease. So it has been giving us a lot of opportunities. So this picture is our whole family. You can see two people you know right in the front. We join together in Branson. We do this every 3 years. It happened to be this year. And we have our 8 children. There's 6 spouses, 6 grandchildren, and there were 2 in the oven in this picture too that are going to be due the end of June. So we're excited. Dan's going to Ecuador at the end of June. I'm staying in Colorado, as you know why. So very excited to be here for their birth. When we first found out they were pregnant, we still didn't know that God was working to make us what they call NED, no evidence of disease. And I didn't know if I'd be alive when they were born. So it looks like we'll probably make it, at least to there. So that, we are looking forward to heaven, and we know that our lives are in his hand, and we appreciate your prayers. And, we're very open about our diagnoses, and if you want to talk to us about it, we're happy to share. Dan's going to tell you a little bit more about what we do as missionaries, because we still do work. He works as missionaries. I go to doctor appointments.
Thank you very much. You've done a good job there, my better half there. So it's such a privilege for us to be. I was just thinking back 40 years and a week ago, we were married in this church. So a lot of great memories, and of course having my in-laws here, my in-loves here is always a great, and many friends to come back to. It's a great place to visit and to be here. Of course, we're a little bit far in Colorado Springs, but further when we were in Ecuador, right? So, but we love coming back here, and we just want to thank you for your faithful support, and not just financially, but praying, as Sheryl's mentioned, the prayers. We have learned through this cancer journey the effectiveness of prayer, more so than we've ever known before. And we know that God is sovereign and that he has us in the palms of his hands, and that we can't change what his plans are for our lives by praying, but we know that one thing that we can claim as promises, and what Sheryl's mentioned, just knowing the joy and the peace that can be known despite our tribulations, and that goes true for any of his children, right? So whatever we go through, and you've had a lot of hardships yourselves, I'm sure, and just knowing that God is there. So what do we do? I might go back here a little bit. We had a video that we were going to present, but I didn't have the knowledge to let Russ know that he needed to download it because we don't have the internet here. So we're not going to show the video. But let me tell you a little bit about, because some of you may have heard of HCJB, which stands for Heralding Christ Jesus' Blessings, which was a pioneer Christian radio station out of Quito, Ecuador. And we would broadcast in a form that was called shortwave broadcast, which is really not used much at all today. So we've changed a lot of how we communicate the gospel, but the gospel message has not changed, just the means of communicating that. And we have also changed our name to Reach Beyond, because we felt that HCJB, which is Hoy Cristo Jesús Bendice in Spanish, belonged to the ministry in Ecuador, to the Spanish-speaking people, because they understood. And anybody, if you ever were to go to Ecuador and you're lost and you have to say, take a taxi or a Uber or whatever, take me to HCJB or HCJB, they will know exactly where to take you. And no matter what part of the country, even in Guayaquil, another big city in Ecuador, they will know where our HCJB station is there in Guayaquil as well. But we felt that that name needed to stay there. And we had changed our way of communicating the gospel by having regional offices and using the voice, which is the media side of things, and the hands, which is healthcare and community development, to reach into areas beyond maybe where conventional missionaries could go in. So we have doctors and nurses and other professionals that go into Central Asia, to Asia Pacific, and so we have 5 different regions that we work in. And actually what has happened in Ecuador, where we had over 400 missionaries at our peak time, we're down to 16 missionaries there. But what's happened is that we've gone through a process of nationalizing through the national church and ministries there. And that is really exciting to see, because I'm still involved in I work in the finance department at the headquarters in Colorado Springs, but I spend probably about 30% of my time still involved in 3 different boards in Ecuador. And the reason for that is, for instance, the hospital, and I'll go ahead and show a couple slides ahead of here. The hospital that you can see here, 2 years ago, celebrated 65 years, and it's called Hospital Vos Andes, or Vos Andes means the voice of the Andes, because we're high up in the Andes Mountains, and that's how our radio station was known, as the Voice of the Andes. Like you may have heard of Voice of America, this was Voice of the Andes. And, but in the hospital, we still use medical as a way to touch people's lives. So it's integrative healthcare, where we're interested about their physical needs, but also very much interested in their spiritual and emotional needs, because they come, like we'll learn a little bit more in the small message that I have on Zacchaeus, that there was a restlessness in his heart, and that's why he sought out Jesus. And we're hoping that people, when they come to the hospital, they're seeking out medical help, but they're also seeking out some restlessness in their hearts. And that puts them in a good place to be able to have the chaplains be able to share the gospel with them. But going back here, we came back, as my wife said, in 2018 because of my diagnosis, and they said, oh, great, we have a free, not really free, staff person, because missionaries have to raise their support, so they consider them free. They don't have to put it into their budget, but and Covenant's been so faithful at supporting us. We have Dan that can come in and fill in the CFO position here in Colorado, and we felt that the Lord was leading us back because of that, because I needed treatment, and we didn't know, well, Sheryl, we knew that she had some breathing issues in that high altitude, but we didn't really move to sea level. We moved to Colorado, which is still at 6,000 feet, so we didn't go down that far. But this is the team that I work with in Colorado. We've gone through a lot of changes in our office in Colorado Springs because we have outsourced our ministries to the national church. So instead of having a $50 million budget that we operate about an $8 to $10 million budget. But what Reach Beyond does is they provide human resources and financial resources to our ministries that are our partner ministries throughout the world. And we don't even use the name Reach Beyond in some of these hard-to-reach places, because they could look us up on the internet and they could see, oh, this is an evangelical mission and so forth like that. But we do the accounting for this organization, and I'm actually in a process of succession planning. When I was given my diagnosis of 18 to 24 months, I thought, well, it'd probably be a good idea to try to figure out what's going to happen once the Lord calls me home. So, but I think it's a healthy thing to do in any organization. I'm not getting any younger, and to have other people. And so the lady in the pink here, Carrie, she's our accounting manager, but I'm turning over a lot of my things to her. And then we had a new hire, Deborah, that came on about a year ago, and she's from the Philippines, and she's taking on a lot of what Carrie used to do. So we have a plan to kind of have this thing covered. And this also because I probably was carrying about a 40-hour-a-week job in Colorado, but then I had another 10 to 15 hours a week that I was doing for the Ecuador ministries that I'm involved with. So, but it's a joy to serve with them and just to see God at work. Now, I sit on 3 different boards in Ecuador, and I do travel quite frequently. Like I mentioned, I probably go down about 5 to 6 times a year, because the Latin culture is very relational. You can do so much on Zooms and team calls, but to actually have the interaction with them, like I lead a Bible study at our clinic, I get tired of doing it by Zoom. I love to be able to interact with the people, and so this is the board that I serve with it's called the foundation because it's the social arm of the hospital, but it's in the fastest growing area of Quito. There's about 600,000 people that live in this area of town called Carapungo, and it reaches the marginalized people that most likely don't have health insurance, and it's a very affordable $12 a fee to see a doctor there. And it's just great to see the outreach that we have through that. We have 2 full-time chaplains that serve there, and like last month we saw 13 people make a profession of faith at that clinic. And so it's just really exciting to see God at work there. And the lady that's in the white jacket, Jimena, she is the hospital administrator or director, and she reports directly to me. So I meet with her on a weekly basis, and just to help with tougher decisions that she needs to make and stuff like that. So it's a joy, but it's great to see the nationalization of these ministries and to see that the nationals the local people can really do a good job and keep running the ministries there. And as I mentioned here, the hospital, I was the director of the hospital part of my time that we served in Ecuador, and now I'm the chairman of the board of the hospital. So I still get involved even though I don't have any medical background as far as experience in that. I do have more experience in administration because of being a bean counter, a CPA. But what I enjoyed when I was the hospital administrator was just going out of the office, out of meetings, and visiting patients and praying for them. But we have a very dynamic chaplaincy program there, and it's really neat that in that country they still are welcoming chaplains into the secular hospitals and in hospices and stuff like that, where they want to have somebody to come alongside patients that are especially in maybe end-of-life situations and so forth like that. And what better time not better time, but what a time to really have an encounter with Christ if you haven't had it before then, is at the end of your life, before it's too late. It was interesting that our hospital has really been blessed by the Lord, even despite COVID. It's bursting at the seams, and we broke ground last September on a building we built the 5 parking garages, levels down below, and 7 stories that are going to be built up, and they decided to name this building after Daniel Shedd. So it's kind of embarrassing, but it's been very touching to see that because of the impact. And what I really want to talk about here is the impact that we've had on the construction crew. We have like 100 men that they were just hired. We did a RFP, a request for proposal, from 3 different construction companies. This company came in, but it's given us the opportunity. Every Monday morning we have a devotional time with 80 to 100 men that are working on this construction. And we also have the main architect. I started a conversation back in September with him. I've met with him a couple other times when I've been down there, just sharing the seed. He and his wife have come to know the Lord. And the owner of the company, Vicente, is a person that just can't understand how he lost his 40-year-old son to cardiac arrest. And he doesn't understand how God could allow that to happen. But having sort of our cancer diagnosis has opened up doors to talk about that God knows what he's doing, that there is some purpose in that. He has not made a profession of faith, but we do have these quote-unquote business meetings, but I always try to have a time to go out for a cup of coffee with these men and to be able to talk with them. The guy in the helmet with me there is Hermann Schumacher, which I share a lot of my responsibilities with. He's a German missionary that's serving with us there. And he's the guy that really knows a lot more about construction. I know more about the financing and that side of things, but don't get me there to try to build anything because I'd probably break it down. But it's just been a blessing to see that. Another family is the Duran Rosero, the lady, the wife, the mother here, Kathy Rosero. She is the head of the Fundación Los Andes, or we call it the Carapungo Clinic. It's a foundation there, and I serve as the vice president on that board. But I've been able to reach out. They treat me like family when I'm down there, so they'll have me over for meals, or we went out to a water park to gather with the kids. The kids call me Tío Daniel. But Giovanni, I'm not quite sure where he stands with the Lord. Kathy came to know the Lord through our hospital because we are a teaching hospital, and through the residency program there, they hear about Christ. Spiritual cardiology talks about how God has made our wonderfully made bodies, like we sang about this morning, that just, how can you not believe that there's a God behind all of that wonderful makeup? But just think about Giovanni, and so I take any opportunities. He loves to play ping pong, and so do I, so we get together and play ping pong together and talk about important things in life. So just briefly here, just to continue to pray with us about these opportunities that we have with the construction crew, Franklin and Maria Silva, who made a profession of faith. Vicente Rodriguez is the owner of the company, and for all the workers that are having this opportunity, every Monday morning at 7:30 in the morning, we have our chaplains leading a devotional, and I've been able to share in a couple of those times as well when I'm there. And pray for decisions regarding our health care going forward. Maybe there's some other options. Our treatment is working now, but it's not, neither one of our cancers is curable. It can be treatable, but it's like kicking the can down the road some more. But we know that God can heal. And so we thank God for the great test results. Anyway, I think I'll better cut here. So